Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. And it's the second day of our series of distance learning during the very hard period that we're all going through due to the coronavirus. And we have today Kevin Burgess from United States, and he will be talking about his experience and give a couple of suggestions about what you can currently use that will help you to teach online. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to see you.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. So I will give you the word to do a little bit in introduction of yourself, and I will mute myself. Just quick house rules that if you're watching live and if you have any questions, you're very welcome to post them in the chat. And we'll have question and answer session after Kevin's presentation. If you're watching in the recording, you're always welcome to contact Kevin via Twitter or any other social media. We'll post his contact details under his presentation. And hopefully the information that will be given to you today is going to be useful. So
Thank,
Kevin, up to you.
thank you very much. So my name is Kevin Burgess. I work at Rutgers Preparatory School in Somerset, New Jersey. We are 253 years old, 254 this year, I think, maybe at graduation. And it is certainly an interesting time for us. We do, when I originally proposed the topic last week of what we do and virtual and augmented reality and how we use those in the classrooms, I did. There's a lot of changes going on in education. There were a lot of changes going on in education before the March of this year, and now we see even more. And I think that that's important for schools to recognize that the change is happening so fast. Some of it is not in our control, and others, there are things that we can do. I think it's important for everybody to sit back and look at each change and try and decide whether or not it can be implemented into your school and how that would get implemented into your school. Things like virtual reality and augmented reality. We have, in the last couple of years, we have done a lot of augmented reality that we've been putting into the classrooms. I would say with augmented reality, sorry, I should have just to kind of define the terms. Augmented reality is something that augments reality. So Snapchat, when you watch sports on television, whether it's the 10-yard marker on the American football games, or I noticed I was watching a swimming race and they had a line where the leader was compared to the world record pace. So you won't see those when you're actually in the environment, like at the natatorium or at the football stadium. Or in the case of Snapchat, the person doesn't actually have the hat on their head. It's just they are Pokemon Go, that kind of stuff is not. Pokemons are not there. So that's augmented reality. And virtual reality is going to take you into an immersive environment and completely replace that environment. And then there's different mixed realities, and sometimes they call them XR to get all the realities together. There are so we started with a lot of augmented reality going, excuse me, into the particularly the younger grades, from say 3 years old up through grade 5. They're about 10 years old. We use this to supplement what they have, and they can like with clever books, they can scan a map and then they get more information than we would traditionally have on a map. So you get information about historic sites or fauna in the area, more than just geographic boundaries and maybe some mountains and rivers and that kind of stuff on a traditional map. We do a lot of work with the students to offer them multiple forms of information, so multiple delivery systems, right? So that they see things differently, they receive it differently. Sometimes, we want them to touch things, right? To get for the kids that are more tactile, we want them to see things, we want them to hear things. We do all of that. Now there's AR audio coming online. So how is that going to change things, right? For us, we're evaluating AR audio maybe it goes into language classrooms. AR audio could do to language classrooms what calculators did to math classrooms, right? You have all these the capacity to hear. So if you had the glasses on and I'm speaking in English, you could hear in your language, not English. And then, if I had a pair of glasses on, you could speak your language and I would hear in English. So you have all these changes going on. I work in a small school, and small schools are, we have 625 students from pre-K 3-year-olds all the way up to graduating high school. So they're small classes. We average about 12 students per class, depending on what grade it is and what class. But when you have those small groups, you have a much tight the connection between the students and the teachers, right? I've been to many countries where classrooms have 50 students, so the teachers aren't as connected. And when I went to college, I was a sophomore in college before I had a class more than 500 students, and then I had classes with 120. So we didn't connect with the professors the same way that you do in a small group. And I see that as more of what's happening with virtual reality. I think virtual reality allows small groups. We can certainly run a virtual reality lecture center where there's a professor up front and students sitting out in the audience, right? So they're all positioned out there looking in, and they can actually turn and see their neighbor, the avatar of their neighbor. I think that this is a delivery system that's it changes very fast. If you look at like the difference between early VR and current VR, you have crazy amounts of change. You do early virtual reality. A lot of it was like in, say, the airline industry. They wanted to train pilots because it was really expensive if the new pilots, and dangerous for them to learn how to fly with a real life plane. So you'd want to do in virtual reality as much as possible. Now we're all the way up to where we can take our chemistry students and put them in virtual reality, and they can do a lab. And there's even with the hand paddles with VR, you get tactile input so they can feel. Like we did, I think it's Superchem, where they put the beaker or test tube down on the counter, and there's a little bit of tactile input, so it feels like they're placing something down. Those kind of changes are coming in so fast, and so we have the immersive environments. We don't do those. We do those with younger students, about second grade, but those interactions are generally speaking a minute, maybe 90 seconds. One of my favorite projects here is the second grade. They do up until this year, we did March of the Penguin. So in March, we did the penguin unit, and the students would get an assignment for a penguin. They would learn about penguins, and then they would dig deep on one particular penguin, and then they would present their penguin, and they would make like a little model, usually at a poster board or something like that, of their penguin, and tell everybody in the class about it. Then to do that research, they would go to the library, meet with the librarians, read books about penguins, and now they actually put on the VR goggles and they're in a penguin colony. So they kind of see penguins all around them, and the kids enjoy those kind of experiences. It's going to be a challenge for us to do those kind of things now because we are closed. We're actually on spring break this week and last week, but we've already announced that we're going to be closed through April 13th. So how does that change for us? Because while we have classroom sets of VR goggles that we use, not everybody has one at home. So how does that work? We do know that, with it's AR Core and I can't remember the other one, but you have the Apple and Google are both embedding in Android and Apple the AR ability, 360 video on YouTube. So there are lots of devices. It's over 1 billion mobile devices that already have the capacity to show this. So a little bit of it's going to be educating the parents as to what's available. We see that going forward now, right? Some of what our lower school teachers have to do is communicate with the parents, find out where that child is now that they're being educated at home, and kind of change the process, or not change, inform the parents what the next step might be for that student and try and build that up. I think that's a big change for families. People were not used to that, and kids went to school. And now, and that was, thanks to things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there's been a big push towards getting as many children as possible from grade 1 to 8 into schools worldwide. And they were down under 75 million students that were out of school because they didn't have a school available in their area. But now UNESCO, I think they estimated over 500 million students now are out of school. That's a big problem. So we have to help all those children and their families who are doing the education, and kind of give them the resources that are available to them that might move the student forward educationally. So we think virtual reality is probably the next step in online classes. So you think about decades ago, there was, I think they were called CLEP exams when I was in school, many decades ago. And you would they would mail you through the regular paper snail mail, a class textbook. And you would read it and prepare for it, and then they would mail the exam, and you would take it. You would go to your school and have somebody proctor it, and then they would send the exam back, and they would grade it. And that's how you did these asynchronous classes back then. And then we moved into online, gradually over time, online classes. Now, even in online classes, excuse me, even in online classes nowadays, you have through AI, you have the ability for some of the platforms to figure out whether or not you're the actual person taking the test or somebody is taking the test for you. So we are definitely moving forward with all this online potential that we still, as teachers, need to help families learn that how to do these things. But the next big thing that we think is coming through is virtual reality, because the big problem with virtual reality right now is going to be time zones, right? So I'm on East Coast US time. So if I were to teach a class in virtual reality, East Coast Asia time would be completely upside down from me. So if I were to teach, right now it's 11 a.m. East Coast. It's 11 p.m. there. So that becomes an issue that we'll have to deal with, and how we structure it. I think we can learn a lot from, like, say, the way they structured call centers, and so there's people online every 3 or 4 time zones, starting a math class or whatever it is. I think that is what we'll see going forward. It is, whether you're in AR or VR, you have the ability to change, right? Textbooks, once they're printed, don't change. The only way they change is a new edition comes out. So all of this is a way of constantly updating. Like Clever Books, I get an update on the app, then I get new information came through. Yes, some of it, you look at different apps and stuff. Some of the updates that they push out are bugs that are being fixed. But another thing that they're pushing out is new content, and I think that's huge. Content changes, right? So we see the doubling period of people. What we know is now like around 2 or 3 years. So if a kid's in high school, then the amount of information that society knows doubles. Certainly while they're in high school, maybe twice while they're in high school. So we need to change that information as fast as it's becoming available. And I think that's that's a big, going to be a big change for educators too. How do we keep up with that rate of change? And AI and AR and AI, artificial intelligence, will help us with that. But I don't. It's going to be very hard for educators to keep up with the change. Sorry, grabbing some water. We see teachers as curators of an exhibit of education, and the teacher is sharing what goes in that exhibit, and constantly updating what they know about the topic. And I think that is a big, I think that's a big advantage for teachers who use technology and understand the changes that are coming out. If you're constantly updating, then you can get the best information out to your students. There are perfect example of me is the periodic table. Excuse me. My children see a different periodic table than I did when I was in school, because there are things that just didn't exist back then. This whole idea of 3D spinning and electrons and stuff. We had those flat little models with the circle and the little electron traveling around. It's changing so fast, and I think that's what we have to accept, is that things are changing very fast, and we're going to try and keep up with it. And one of the ways that we can do that is to use the technology and use it the best way possible. There was a day when schools adapted to readily available paper and pencils. Those were big advancements at some point in time. And what did the teachers do with it? And we figured all that out, and we'll figure all this AR and VR out, and what parts are good and what parts are bad. And, and like I said, back towards the beginning there, we don't put 3-year-olds in VR. We don't put 8-year-olds in VR for more than a minute and a half. We don't do 45 minutes VR sessions with anybody, and up to the 18-year-olds, unless they're doing it at home and they're playing games or something like that. But that's not where we're going with this yet. We have to figure this out. And I think that's something that's important when looking at technology, is what you, the educators, what do you think this could do to improve your class? And hopefully you see it as an improvement. And if you don't, then don't use it. We definitely only want to use things that are improving the education. And I think that's whether it's AR or VR or whatever it is, we just want to integrate the information that we feel, and not just information, but methods of delivery and everything that we feel are going to make this experience better. So I think I've gone on for long enough about this. If you do have any questions and you're live, you can put them in the chat. And if not, I'm on Twitter at Kevin Merges, KevinMerges, and that's also Skype and WeChat. And then my email is my last name, Merges, MERGES, and then it's Rutgers Prep, all one word, .org, RUTGERSPREP.org. And I'm love to talk to you, exchange information, about how you are integrating stuff, or how you'd like to integrate stuff. And there are a lot of topics related to this that we didn't even begin to talk about. And, everything from equity to how students all over, students with disabilities, how do they use this? Is this empowering, or is this something that kind of secludes them, restricts their access to education more? Those conversations are things that we really need to have as we move more into technology in society. There's so much change coming, and we need to sit there or stand as educators and make sure that we're doing the best for the students and improving education going forward.
Kevin, thank you so much. It's quite an interesting aspect of obviously using augmented and virtual reality. So thank you very much for sharing that. And I don't see any questions. So okay. I would say that if you're watching the recording, please contact Kevin if you do have any questions. I'm sure he will be able to answer all your questions and help you out. So, and yes. And join us tomorrow. We'll have another session. So looking forward to seeing you. Thank you very much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.